This video is a very quick introduction to using iBooks with Zoom on an iPad. Zoom is the magnification facility that is built into the iPhone, iPod Touch and iPad. There's a number of ways that you can turn it on. The way my iPad is set up, I can triple click the home button and this brings up a menu of accessibility options, and I can then touch Zoom to introduce it. When Zoom is turned on, everything on the screen is magnified. I can turn my magnification higher by double tapping with 3 fingers, and after the second tap, dragging my fingers up the screen. And I can make it smaller by double tapping on the screen with 3 fingers and then dragging my fingers down the screen. I can also turn my Zoom on and off simply by double tapping with 3 fingers. So if I want to use iBooks with Zoom, the way that I'll do it, first of all, I have to find my iBooks application. I happen to know this is on the second page of my iPad, so I can use 3 fingers to drag around the screen, and because I know iBooks is at the top left, I can find it fairly easily, and then tap to open it. The magnification goes off briefly when the screen changes so that I have a chance to find out which area of the screen I'm actually viewing magnified. The next thing I need to do is find the book that I'm interested in. In this case, I'm looking for one called Great Expectations. Once my book opens, there are some menus at the top. One of them is the 2-letter A's next to each other, and if I tap that, there are some options here to do with changing the brightness, which is at the top, changing the size of the font, which is the 2 A's, and in order to make my text bigger, I just tap the larger A, and you can probably see that behind the menu the text is actually getting bigger as each time I tap it. I can also choose a font if I have a particular preference for serif or sans serif. I quite like the font that I'm using at the moment, so I'm going to leave that on that one. And there's also a number of themes. Within the themes I can choose a night theme, which would give me white text on black, or a sepia theme, which just makes the background a little bit less glary if I have a problem with glare. At the moment, you might have noticed before I came into this menu, my book was in 2 columns, and the last thing I might want to do is change it so it's a single column. Once I've finished making these changes, I go back to my book by tapping outside the menu, and the last thing I'll want to do is turn Zoom off, because otherwise it would be very difficult to read by scrolling around the screen with 3 fingers all the time. But now I can read my book in the usual manner, with the font large enough to see, and when I want to finish reading the book and go back to my library or to do something else on my iPad, I can just reintroduce Zoom by double tapping with 3 fingers again, and then everything is large enough for me to see what I need to be able to do, such as going back to my library. This has been a very short introduction to using iBooks with Zoom, but I hope you found it useful. Thank you.
This video featured the iBooks iPad app version 3.1, open bracket 1523, close bracket, running on an Apple iPad with iOS version 6.1.3.
RNIB, supporting blind and partially sighted people.